Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons, or ever has loved The Simpsons, hosted by two dudes that grew up on The Simpsons. My name is Miles, better known as Mr. Most Days Off, and today we are going behind the Diddly. Wait, no, that's actually another failed spin-off show that we barely ever do anymore, but we'll get back to it eventually. We have a really just unique episode, I'm going to say, to start out with. I'm going to save more opinions for later as we go along, but absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the more unique episodes of The Simpsons that we have covered to date, Behind the Laughter. And of course, joining me as always today, your co-host with the most, Richie the Whiz Kid. How you doing today, Rich?
I'm intrigued to see what you have to say about this one, because I have questions. I need to know if this is canon. I need to know if this is Treehouse of Horror-esque. I want to know.
Is anything canon in The Simpsons?
But yeah, this is actually a really fun rewatch of this one. But I guess we'll get into that on this review here. So let me go ahead, not back, and throw it to you, even though we kind of go back in some scenes in this episode. The man, the myth, the Hollywood hogwash. It is Miles.
Hey, we were just over here watching Hollywood Hogwash. That's such a good joke. I love that. This is an interesting episode. It is a very funny episode. It is a very weird episode. There's lots to talk about it. And it is also the finale to season 11, which means that the only thing we have left to do this season, Rich, is to come back for a season 11 finale spectacular. But that's not till next week. Yeah, we haven't done this in a while because of the whole Best Darn Everything. But I almost said Behind the Diddly again. But no, Behind the Laughter today is what we're talking about. It originally aired on May 21st in the year 2000. The chalkboard gag on this one is "I will not obey the voices in my head." And we see the couch gag is the couch is actually a coin-op massage couch, but it vibrates so much that it just goes right off screen. And right off the bat, we have to talk about the title, Behind the Laughter, because this episode is very much a parody of the show Behind the Music, which was very, very popular in the early 2000s on VH1. And just to kind of get it started with the commentary as well, which I'll admit there's a lot of commentators on this one, not necessarily a ton of info, but a lot of what we did get was really good. This commentary featured Mike Scully, Mark Kirkland, Matt Selman, George Meyer, Tim Long, and Ian Maxstone Graham. And what was really cool, the first thing they talked about on this episode, on the commentary, was how awesome and receptive that VH1 was with this episode, because they gave them everything: sound effects, displays, graphics, and even the narrator of this episode that we hear talking about behind the scenes of The Simpsons is the same narrator that they had on the show Behind the Music. His name is Jim Ford. So VH1 was very supportive and very much into the idea that The Simpsons was parodying one of their most popular shows.
That's really cool that they were on board with all that, because I think that it definitely makes a difference. Especially the opening credits where you actually see the Behind the Laughter part, it looks just like the beginning of a Behind the Music thing. So I think that definitely helps sell the big joke.
Absolutely. Yeah. The graphic that I use for this podcast. So if you're looking on anywhere and it has the individual episode logo or whatever, that's the actual graphic and font and everything was actually provided by VH1. And then The Simpsons just was able to change it up slightly, give it a little tweak to hide some jokes in there and whatnot. I like at one point they're talking about money, scandal, and it just pops up at one point and just says graphics. But this episode just starts off very, very weird. It's instantly recognizable that it's not a normal Simpsons episode.
Do you feel like it's weird because it does the opening credits and then it starts again with the opening credits for a few seconds, that the first time you saw it, you're like, is there something wrong?
It does almost feel like your show like skipped in some sort of way, and like just started over on the loop or something. But the second time the Simpsons credits start to play, we do get a voiceover come in a few seconds later.
They were the first family of American laughter.
And we start to see like different magazine. They're all fake, but we basically start to see like that the Simpsons are on magazine covers and all over pop culture, and just everywhere in the world.
Surfing a tidal wave of hilarity.
I figured you'd do the rest since you started, but the narrator continues surfing a tidal wave of hilarity. And on to the stairs of Superstar Bay. But behind the chortles, this funny fivesome was trapped in a private hell. And we see that the Simpsons are like driving on the beach, but they do the thing that they would always do on Behind the Music, where it seems like, everything's going peachy. And then they start to talk about how things take a turn for the worse. And it cuts to like the negative. So it's like in black and white, kind of the negative photo image of what we've seen.
Yeah.
And we start immediately getting interviews with characters that we're familiar with, but they're not talking in the normal way that we would expect. They're talking directly to us, or directly to the camera, if you will, in an interview style. We see like Homer saying, everyone wanted a piece of us.
They told us what to wear, how to dress, which clothes we should put on.
And we even start cutting around, seeing like Bart and Lisa being at school. And I think Lisa's in her room, but Bart's like, the cops found me driving on the sidewalk.
I had no business hosting the Oscars. After the show, Meryl Streep spit on me.
And we get this great cut of Meryl Streep like actually spitting, and it does a slow-mo. Again, all of these shots are so so reminiscent of the actual VH1s Behind the Music that to some extent I'm going to spoil a little bit of what I'm going to talk about at the end, or what I was planning to say at the end. I can't get through this without bringing it up now already. But like there's so much of this episode that is very much a product of its time. And I do feel like this is one of those episodes that if like you didn't live in the early 2000s, if you weren't like of television watching age, if you're not familiar with the show Behind the Music, I feel like a lot of this is going to be lost on you because there's a lot of just subtle nods to the production of that show.
Anyways, Meryl Streep's spit hits the Simpsons picture, and it slow-mo falls off the banister, shattering on the ground.
Such a cliche moment, always seeing the family portrait break. But this one, like, it was a quad picture of the four of them, and it somehow broke in a perfect grid.
Maggie's not a picture for some reason, but
And also, I guess they weren't satisfied with how much it broke because we see a hammer come in at one point and just start breaking up the fragments further. Tonight, the Simpsons, as you've never seen them before, on Behind the Laughter. And again, this is the actual theme song coming on right now. I mean, like everything might be slightly tweaked to fit the Simpsons, but like that music was provided by VH1. They also do the same thing where they show a bunch of black and white clips. They're literally just actual flashbacks to episodes. We see like Marge with her pistol from the Springfield Connection. We see Homer from Homer's Phobia. We see a picture of Homer vacuuming his eyeball from Lard of the Dance. And all of these are just shown in black and white, essentially is the only real change. Very much like, again, during the opening of a Behind the Music, they're going to be showing the like old days of how everything was swell.
Everything was swell at the beginning, Miles.
It's true. We actually get our first look at what I guess are the real Simpsons. Is that how we're looking at this right now? Because Homer's talking to the camera. He's talking about like the old home movies they would take. And like, for instance, we see a young Bart putting the water hose in the gas tank while Marge tries to like restrain him. We see Lisa walking in snow till she sinks and Marge has to like scoop her out. And probably the funniest one is Maggie is writing on Homer as he sleeps on the couch with like a Sharpie, much like you would do to the first drunk person at a party who passed out. I guess more squiggles and less dicks, but still the same concept. And Marge like runs over at first to stop him, or I'm sorry, stop Maggie from riding on him. And then like halfway through, she's just like, whatever, and lets him go. Nobody told us how tough it is to raise kids. They almost drove me to fortified wine.
Then we figured out we could park them in front of the TV. That's how I was raised, and I turned out TV.
We start to see the neighbors and surrounding people interviewed, starting with Ned Flanders, who says, I'd see him sitting on that couch all day long, just staring at that Hollywood hogwash.
Our favorite show was Hollywood Hogwash. But we also loved the Drek Squad.
They mention a bunch of other shows like the Malarkeys, Dumbing It Down, Sheriff Lowbrow, and Home Improvement. Gotta get those jabs in where you can. But Homer points out that they never saw people like us on TV.
TV families were always hugging and tackling issues.
Homer kept saying he could do a more realistic family show, and finally I said, so do it. Either beep or get off the pod.
And bleep, he did. Using his home as the studio and his family as the cast, this Phineas Peckinpah shot Peckinpah, thank you, Miles, shot a crude 5-minute video.
We see a black and white video take of it almost has like what I'm going to say, like a Dick Van Dyke or I Love Lucy vibe to it, kind of. Even to the point where it's literally the classic boss coming over for dinner, but like it's so bad, it's so like cheesy and obviously set up to the point that like even when Homer like does his big blunder, which is the add too much soap to the washing machine, they move the washing machine like 3 feet outside of like the entranceway, so Homer doesn't have to go too far to do it. Oh, and Homer, instead of Joe, in this version of the show, Homer says, Mamma Mia!
Now I have to do it.
So we see that it wasn't exactly the same idea, and it definitely didn't stay as real as Homer had pitched it, we'll say.
I like Lisa. It was amazing how fast Dad betrayed his vision of a realistic show.
Oh, and this line's so brutal, but also just so Homer and really funny. But Marge comes in. Okay, the material was a little corny, but Homer and I had real chemistry on screen.
Every day I thought about firing Marge. You know, just to shake things up.
Again, it's borderline jerk-ass Homer, but I think it's a good thing because it's not over. It's more funny than it is mean, but it is funny.
You got to think when you're doing like a behind the laughter type thing, how do you make it funny? Like you got to have that drama in there like that. That's what makes it funny. But it's just
well, and you know they just referenced the Home Improvement too, and like that show had I can't remember what that show is called, but they had a version of Behind the Laughter, but instead of behind the music, but it was actually like going behind the scenes of like certain TV shows. And they did one that was Home Improvement, and that actually revealed that is it Patricia O'Neill? No, that's not right. I think I was thinking of Patrice O'Neill, who's a comedian. But the woman who played Tim's wife in that show, I'm blanking on her name, Patricia something.
That's everybody loves Raymond.
Her and Tim Allen like famously like got into some disagreements about like both salary and also like the story arc of Jill.
Really?
Patricia Richardson, thank you. Yeah, so you know that kind of in itself almost parodies those types of things. And actually another famous thing that came out on that show is they used to basically just like really fuck over those kids, man, because like every year the 3 kids would be like, yeah, we really want more money, and every year they'd be like, man, we can just replace you, and then they'd be like, okay, we'll do it again for the same rate. Which is fucked up, but also yeah, I mean it is what it is. But that's for the behind the laughter of Home Improvement. This is for behind the laughter of The Simpsons.
I think we went too far behind the laughter on that one.
We see that Homer actually takes his idea to Hollywood. We get like one of those montages on the map or whatever where he has to end up turning around several times and goes the wrong way.
It says like Hollywood 9 miles, and then he's on his way to Hollywood, and the next sign says Hollywood 500 miles. He's like, go! He does a U-turn on the highway.
Shouldn't that have been a Mamma Mia moment?
It should have been, but that was in real life, not on his TV show.
Yeah, that's fair. When he gets to Hollywood, he has meetings with ABC, NBC, and Telemundo, but they all reject Homer. But luckily, Marge has an in. It turns out that her hairdresser was also the Fox Network's president.
Oh, man.
We see they also show too that whenever that hairdresser signs for the 13 episodes of the first season, he signs Rupert, which we have to assume is Rupert Murdoch.
I thought the hairdresser looked like a hairdresser, but then in the next scene,
I thought it was the same guy.
There's 2 signature lines, and Homer writes his name kind of crappily, but then Rupert writes his name even worse.
Yeah, it almost feels like that should have been in crayon just to like hammer the point home. But yeah. It was good. Mr. Murdoch needs a little coaching to get get the job done. The show turned out to be an immediate hit, and we start to see it getting like the Beatles mania treatment. Like girls are screaming hysterically when Bart's skateboarding by. They're watching it on TV, and I love this joke because the pullback reveal is that those are actually patients in a hysteria ward, which explains the hysteria.
Yep, and they get blasted with a hose of water.
Yeah, that's right. They get like immediately the hose treatment, which is horrifying because we do treat people like that in mental hospitals. It's awful. I don't know about hoses specifically, but surely much worse things. Bart figures that, he's talking into the camera here. He's doing an interview. He's like, yeah, I figured the show would be a hit when I saw a school wearing a Bart t-shirt or a Bart Simpson t-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
And then we see a behind the scenes of that, and they apparently had just like pre-made a bunch of Bart shirts with like all of the slogans that you could possibly ever think of, including things like birth begins or like life begins at conception and bullshit like that. Which that got me thinking, dude. I think the only reason this show made it is because we weren't smart enough to quit before 6 weeks, and we live in Texas, so you know.
There you go. Wow.
Much like that joke, The Simpsons was a smash. Viewers couldn't get enough of the show's fractured take on the modern family.
The funniest stuff came right out of real life.
We see Homer and Bart sitting on the couch, and Homer's like, son, let's go out for some frosty chocolate milkshakes.
Cowabunga, dude.
And cut.
Dad, I've never said cowabunga in my life. Your script sucks.
Why, you little? And we get like the actual real life choking out of Bart, which then we hear the director being like, hey, that's pretty funny.
And then it's funny because Bart and Homer look at each other like, oh, we're on to something here. And then they're like fake choking, which is very clearly a fake choking at that point.
It goes from being very like the real thing that we're used to being like a bad pantomime of it.
But I love Homer's response when it cuts back to his little interview piece here.
And that horrible act of child abuse became one of our most beloved running gags. We actually see a conveyor belt in a factory printing out toys of Homer choking out his son, which would never make it to the shelves for what it's worth.
Not in America.
With Simpsons merchandise selling like crazy and Simpson gin wedding whistles worldwide, the money was pouring in. We see this entire Simpsons family rolling on a pile of cash, and that includes both the dog and the cat, who seems to be really loving it, but the fish mostly just seems like it wants to get back into its bowl.
Yep.
We were using $50 as toilet paper, and toilet paper is dog toilet paper. We next see a cement mixer, but it's filling the Simpsons house with caviar instead of cement, and like the whole family's just like eating it by this like handful.
Convinced that the good times would never stop rolling, the Simpsons moved out of their trademark house and into MC Hammer's.
And one of the greatest visual gags in the episode, it's just hard to even say that just because there's so many of them, but we see the Hammer Time estate And on the gate where it says hammer time, Homer removes one of the M's and like fixes the A into the shape of an O. So we get the Homer time estate.
Great.
It's good stuff.
We found a secret room that was filled to the ceiling with parachute pants. I'm wearing some now.
And Bart's like beatboxing and dancing and moonwalking at school. But pants or no pants, the Simpsons were flying high.
Yeah, I've seen all the overnight sensations. Brad Hall, Rich Little, Little Richard. But the Simpsons blew them all away. They even had a hit record. Meanwhile, Crustophinia sits on the shelf.
So that Krusty joke real quick, what do you call it? What's the name of the album you just read? Crustafina. That's a parody of the Who's 1973 album Quadrophenia, according to the IMDb.
Krusty also had a note on his window to call Jay Leno back.
Lisa points out that none of us have ever sung before, but Mr. Geffen believed in us. And we see all the Simpsons like in studio now playing tambourines and singing, "We're gonna groove tonight. We'll make you feel all right. Simpsons Boogie." And they were way more in sync than me and Richie just were, for what it's worth. It was they were jamming.
I don't think they paused between the end of each line.
I couldn't remember. It's fine. I was also waiting for you to go, and I think you were waiting for me to go, and then we just ended up like waiting on each other. It's like when two people try to pass at the same time.
No, no, after you. You know what? We're both gonna go. Now we both went. No. It's okay. You go ahead.
I'm going to come back. I feel awkward that I went first. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Let's both. Okay. Now we had an accident.
The narrator points out they had hits like Simpsons Boogie, Lovely to Love Your Lovin', and Simpsons Christmas Boogie, which all went mega platinum and swept the Grammys.
Right. And the award for best hardcore thrash metal goes to this is Christmas Boogie.
The Simpsons get up and accept the award while the audience applauds, and that was Ozzy Osbourne presenting, and he actually bites off the what was it, the head of an
award. Yeah,
there you go. On that real quick too, this song actually, I'm sorry, the Grammy thing. This episode actually was quite the award winner itself. I'll come back on that at the end and talk about what it did. But I just thought it was funny that they're parodying the awards while this one also has won awards. But moving on.
I thought this was a knock where somebody actually won like a thrash metal award when they weren't.
You're 100% right. Yeah, thank you. The Simpsons Christmas Boogie winning the Grammy for Best Hard Rock / Metal Recording is a parody of the incident at the 31st Annual Grammy Awards in 1989, where Jethro Tull won despite not being a rock or metal band.
That went over well.
Yeah. For America's favorite family, everything was coming up roses. But those roses contained ready-to-sting bees.
What?
When we come back.
I want to set the record straight. I thought the cop was a prostitute.
When Behind the Laughter continues. And that brings us to the end of our first act. And again, this is a weird episode. This episode is cut and edited more like a Behind the Music episode than a Simpsons episode. But it's got a strong group of Simpsons writers punching it up and making it very, very funny. But it's almost hard to define so far. It really is. And again, It's such a product of its time that it's hard to really discuss. Like, it would be impossible to discuss this episode without the context of Behind the Music. I just don't know that it would work.
I want to say, like, when I first saw this as a younger, going into his mid-teens person, I was not looking forward to the episode. I was upset that it wasn't just a regular Simpsons episode with Homer and Bart doing something stupid. But as an adult, so far to this point, I've been enjoying it so much more and think it's so much more funny.
See, that's interesting because I actually kind of have an opposite feeling towards this one. I loved Behind the Music. I watch that show all the time. So this episode actually felt really fun in the moment at the time, and rewatching it, I still enjoyed it. I still think there's a lot of great jokes, but I definitely would put this one in the list of episodes that I don't think are as good today as they were at the time that they aired.
I started waiting for more clips to be shown, where I was wondering if this was like their yearly clip show where they were just trying to add stuff in the middle. But then I started realizing, no, there's a lot of like brand new stuff they had to animate in this one. So that can't be the case.
Yeah, I mean, it took, I mean, you heard all the commentators on this episode, and all of those people were in some way involved with working on this episode, because anytime they do these weird things, it creates a bunch of work for them.
Yeah.
For sure. Let's see here. I don't have anything on the notes until we get to the Richie Rich scene, so I'll just leave those where they are, and we'll move right on to our second act, where we see that after one season on the air, The Simpsons is a smash, both in America and abroad. Even the Queen of England is amused by the family's antics. We see there's actually a parade for the Simpsons family, which is hilarious because they're getting like all of the love, and they're followed by they're in a convertible just waving at people, and then they're followed by another convertible that features the Pope, Santa Claus, and an astronaut, and they're like no response whatsoever.
But behind the streamers and confetti, storm clouds were gathering.
And we see actual storm clouds block the sun, so the narrator corrects them.
Figurative storm clouds.
And on command, the clouds just leave. We start to do interviews with the people around town, and first we see our familiar barkeep.
Homo was spending money like a teenage Arab. He bought me a Rolex and cashmere jeans. I felt kind of guilty because I was always trying to score with his wife. So when do we start filming?
And you can tell somebody off camera responds that they're already filming because Mo gets a look on his face and looks like real scared into the camera.
Oh.
Outside, we see Lenny talking. Even Bart was throwing dough around. He paid me and Carl $1,000 to kiss each other.
Hey, do we ever get that money?
But reckless spending and interracial homoeroticism were just volume 1 of the Encyclopedia Self-Destructica. And the book actually explodes, which is fun. Even more harrowing were the events of one April afternoon.
Just a weird thing here where it shows a picture of a calendar with April, but then a Jack in the Box pops out of it.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Honestly, I think that was, again, a nod to the VH1 show because they would always have these really weird, like, segue things and, like, this odd B-roll footage. And they also did, like, reenactments of, like almost like a bad, true crime show from the 90s, like a Dateline or something. But, yeah, we cut to an interview with Bart.
The script originally called for me to jump the gorge, but I had been up all night paying people to kiss, so Dad volunteered to do the stunt.
Usually I appreciate it when they do a call, they plant the seed and call it back a little later, but that is such a great callback to the like just previous scene right there. It's like almost like instant gratification.
Yeah.
But it's a really funny, just like, yeah, apparently when Bart got money, he just decided he likes to see people kiss. I get it. We cut to an actual scene from Bart the Daredevil where Homer himself was
Homer's
jumping the gorge on the yeah, that's right. He's watching
giving commentary to
TV. Whoa, that just got weirdly meta. Homer is doing commentary for this episode of The Simpsons, and I forgot to list him on our commentary sheet for this episode. But Dan Castellaneta not involved.
Nope. Everything was going great at first. I felt like I was king of the world.
We actually see him on tape, like doing the like, I'm king of the world. Woohoo! Woohoo!
Right about here, I realized something's wrong. Yep, there I go.
Pow, 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 ow.
Then came the rocks, jagged rocks, hitting me with their jags.
The sequence became an instant comedy classic, but the audience didn't see was the unfunny aftermath. We actually see Homer's in the hospital with like complete body cast, which I think we did see in the episode. But he tries to walk using handrails, and he ends up snapping his other leg. This causes him to be in a lot of pain. He starts screaming until a nurse actually starts dumping pills into his mouth, and then he chills out. That's actually a pretty good metaphor for our American healthcare system. He just doesn't show the bill that he's going to have waiting for him at home. Yeah. That cost him his house and any sort of future, but he's not hurting now. So it's the best healthcare system in the world. Somehow Homer gets addicted to painkillers. Who would have thought? And it was the only way he could perform the bone-cracking physical comedy that made him a star. We start to get cutbacks of things like Homer hitting the mounds of snow on Little Big Mom, where he has to think about Ned Flanders wearing nothing at all. Nothing at all. He's also when Willie starts pounding him in the vent during Lard of the Dance, when he falls through the skylight of When You Dish Upon the Star, when he crashes in the cherry picker on Lost Our Lisa, and when he gets hit by the wrecking ball by a Millhouse Divided. I think there's one or two I missed in there, but a bunch of just Homer taking the punishment. Then we cut to Homer talking
about a chair on him from Millhouse Divided. The other one was from Sideshow Bob Roberts, where they're trying to destroy the Simpsons home, and he's holding back the wrecking ball.
Homer jumps back in. Why did I take that much punishment? Let's just say that the fame was like a drug. But what was even more like a drug was the drugs.
So that's why I said I wanted to know if we would consider this canon, because that would completely demolish the
unbreakable Homer theory. He's just a drug addict.
Except I think we've said before that he can have broken bones and things like that. He just comes back from them super fast. So I did make a note that like they didn't really say how long his recovery was after all these stunts. So I think that it's still okay and intact if this is in fact canon, which it definitely is not.
He's got all of the abilities and superpowers of Johnny Knoxville. Is what I'm reading.
There you go. Yeah, we've always said he feels the pain.
Yeah, he's got to. In spite of the behind the scenes issues, the family's star kept rising like a plastic bag caught in an updraft. And that's actually when we see the Simpsons are so big that they're actually getting their names on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, passing over Milton Berle, Nelson Mandela, and the Cheerios Honeybee.
All right, that's a big one.
Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. Sorry.
This is a comic guy interviews and says that Lisa was trying to buy a rare comic book, but the check bounced higher than a rubber girl.
Yeah, for the people listening right here, this is also a very weird script to go through, because at points you can't tell if there's a narrator voice or if it's the person that narrated the script. So like when we do stuff like what just happened, it's like, wait, was that? Nope. Okay, it's a little confusing.
I'm sure it's seamless if you're listening to it.
Exactly. So I apologize for that blunder.
The narrator cuts back in. Where did the money go? Well, Marge lost much of the family fortune investing in birth control products.
I learned something. When people reach for their diaphragm, they don't want to see my picture. But it's her like nagging.
It's her like as if she was getting onto Homer, but it's on a dive. Honestly, I'm surprised those don't exist and that I don't have one in my collection somewhere just because it's such a weird item.
Oh God.
I'm gonna put that on my table here where I record. As the Simpsons' money dwindled, their expenses soared. From the original group of 5, the cast ballooned to dozens, then hundreds. And actually, I had a question on this one, because we see they start to show, like, first it's just the Simpsons core family, then it's like extended family. Then we get that what I would consider now to be a pretty famous poster. It's a yellow background, and it's like every member of the Simpsons cast. And I want to know, is this the first time that ever existed, and then they made a poster out of it and made it like a thing, or did that already exist and they used it to put it into this episode? Yeah,
I feel like it would make more sense if the poster already existed and then they used it. But
see, I kind of think it's the other way around. This would be like a good reason to have to make that for the first time.
Yeah. This is the whole chicken and the egg scenario we got going on here.
This is a very much a chicken and the egg scenario, and I, for one, want to know why the egg crossed the road.
Because he was cracked up. I don't know.
Good enough.
Mm-hmm.
We start to see some of our auxiliary characters, we could say. We get a nice interview with Wiggum outside his car. I've never acted before in my life, but if the sea captain could be in the show, why not me? I've even got a catchphrase. I lost it.
Then another bombshell. An anonymous tipster alerted Uncle Sam that the Simpsons were evading their income taxes.
We immediately cut to a shadowy figure standing behind the Quickie Mart counter with a very familiar silhouette and an even more familiar voice. Pooh straight up admits that he finked on Homer, but you know what? He deserved it, because never have I seen such an abuse of the take a penny, leave a penny tray.
The taxmen were merciless.
And you actually see an IRS man vacuuming like the gold jewelry off of Homer's everywhere. It starts with his like chain and then his face, but then it eventually goes to his nipple rings. Hey. Which he takes those being ripped out like really well for what it's worth. Even as an unbreakable person, nipples are sensitive, bro.
They are. Hey, they can't take our house. My potbelly pig is in there.
And literally in the background, helicopters are literally chaining up to MC Hammer's former home and moving it away as Homer cries about his pig.
So they had a pig before Spider Pig. I did not remember this.
Yeah. Pet pigs have just always been a part of the Simpsons. It's a Mandela, dude. Like, we all just thought it happened in it happened in the Simpsons movie, but the Simpsons have always had a pig, man. What are you talking about? You don't remember all the classic hijinks from season 2 and Bart got his pet pig for the first time? Come on, man. We do a podcast on this show.
From that time where they had no pig anymore and ate bacon?
I mean, to be fair, they did shoot that. Yeah, they shot that pig over a dam at one point, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. So now we've had a bacon and an eggs joke. Oh,
ooh, hey, we're part of.
Now I can say breakfast. I'm cracking us up. Oh,
nice.
That was a little too over easy. Oh,
well done. Inevitably, the behind-the-scenes turmoil took its toll on their TV series.
And action.
And we see a couch gag starts up, but it gets cut halfway through, and immediately they the family starts like getting into it with each other.
Well, what happens is everyone's in the scene except for Bart. So Bart's missing from the shot, and that's why the director calls, hold on, cut. Bart, if it's not too much trouble.
And we cut to Bart, or we just like pan over to Bart rather, where Bart is being massaged. He's having like a pedicure and he's talking on a phone. Fine, I'll do Teen Wolf 3. I've got fair weather friends to feed.
Dad, I want to go to bed. Aren't there child labor laws?
And Homer gets defensive. Who told you about those laws? Was it Marge?
Hey, you've been riding me all day. Why don't you poop in your hat?
And then Kang and Kodos walk in. Are you going to need us tonight?
I have ballet tickets. Not that they'll do much good now.
So again, what is this episode?
Yeah.
Aliens are real. Deal with it. The narrator continues to explain that the family's troubles are starting to take a toll on the show, and they started to come up with plots that are more gimmicky and outlandish, such as the principal and the pauper, where we cut to the scene that everybody got all their panties in a twist about, where Seymour Skinner reveals that he is in fact not the real Seymour Skinner. I love that they are stabbing at themselves or punching at themselves in this joke. I love that they're addressing it head on. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, I thought that episode was fun. We reviewed it. We talked about it. I don't understand why it got as much hate as it did. But it did get it. There's no doubt that people really got upset about that episode.
They told us to go on like it didn't happen at the end of the episode. So as far as I'm concerned, it never happened.
Simpsons reset.
There you go.
Yeah, it works for me. We cut to a bunch of former guest stars, such as Stephen Hawking, Butch Patrick, Gary Coleman. And they were all just added to appear in a bid to boost the ratings.
That wasn't all.
We see Bart is judging a Miss Hawaiian Tropic Beauty contest, and the Sheraton Halekulula. Yeah. And then on the way home, he actually gets into a fight with one of the flight attendants, and he's taken off the plane in handcuffs while he's like trying to keep his face covered for the media.
Well, this is the part that this one is the one that always just rubbed me the wrong way. I guess it's because, I don't know if it's because Bart's a 10-year-old boy or because it's like, this is how it usually goes with celebrities. But this joke always, I felt like it was maybe a little bit too far. And
really?
I don't know. You don't want to think of somebody you like or admire doing something bad and mean like that.
Well, remember at this point, if this episode is canonical, then what we're looking at is actually a 21-year-old playing a 10-year-old boy, which actually makes that situation a lot more realistic.
Yeah. I'm just saying the fact that Bart would do something like that always made me feel like a little upset.
That's fair. It's like it's too much of like real life as opposed to like kind of silly, fun antics or pranks that you would expect. Right. Yeah, I get that. That's what happens when you go behind the laughter, Richie.
Yeah, I know.
You're gonna get some things that you're not ready to handle. And speaking of Richie, while Bart was in rehab, his friend Richie Rich substituted for him on TV.
Oh, okay. Weird segue there, Miles.
Desperate to polish their tarnished image, the family agreed to live. I'm cutting ahead. I want to talk about Richie Rich. Sorry, I thought that was in reference to this. My bad. Fucking weird script. You already said it. So yeah, basically we get a scene where like they're just trying to do like a standard Simpsons bit, but Richie Rich is like wiping his face with $100 bills and shit. And according to the commentary track on this one, actually, kind of an interesting little fun fact: the way they were able to get around the copyright on this one is they just had to change the color. So that's why Richie Rich's suit is green, and that was enough to avoid copyright infringement.
That's a very clever way. And I must say green looks much better on him.
And green makes sense. It's money, right?
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
So moving on, we see now that the narrator comes back in talking about how they're desperate to polish their tarnished image. So the family agreed to a live appearance at the Iowa State Fair.
Right from the start, I had a bad feeling about that gig.
It was an evening that none of them would ever forget. Or would they? No. Again, that's the narrator who I mentioned at the top, the actual narrator from Behind the Music, which is Jim Ford. I love that Jim Ford is also doing such a good job of kind of making fun of maybe not himself, but his product in general. Because like the way that they would always do those teasers and stuff, like, coming up after the break type of stuff. And on this one, they're like, we'll never forget. Or will they? We see on an outdoor stage at a fair, the Simpsons come out all wearing large ceramic heads of themselves. And Homer, they all remove their fake heads, revealing just a smaller version of the same face. Hello, Iowa. Does anyone have a donut?
Oh.
And all of the crowd is just hooting and hollering for this simple call to themselves.
Now, Homer, this is no time to be thinking about food.
Yeah, Homer, forget the donuts. We're here to go nuts. Musically, that is.
What kind of song should we play?
Something that swings with the beat of New Orleans?
No, something that rocks. That's the sound of today.
Swings!
Rocks!
Swings!
Rocks!
And the narrator cuts back in for what I think is actually my favorite joke of the episode. Sadly, this argument was not part of the act.
I'll kill you!
You don't have the guts, little man!
Folks, we're just having a little family tiff. If you could just bear with us.
Shut up. Always trying to act so mature. I'm glad you make the least amount of money.
Oh, that's it.
And so we have Homer and Marge physically fighting each other, Bart and Lisa going at it, and Maggie is over giving her sister the assist, just pounding Bart in the face. Yeah. And the narrator keeps coming in. Before a riot could break out, Jimmy Carter came to the rescue with his comedy-breaking dancing.
Got a brother named Billy, and my teeth look silly. Break it down now. He's doing these breakdancing moves on the
It's
stage.
former President Jimmy Carter is who we're talking about for what it's worth, just to make sure that joke isn't being missed by anybody. And actually, they gave a shout out to Tom Gamble, wrote the entire Jimmy Carter breakdowns bit, which he's been a prominent writer for The Simpsons for a long time at this point. And we were actually fortunate enough to talk with his son a couple years ago, Henry Gamble, who is on the podcast with us.
Yeah.
So the audience is Jimmy Carter saved the day because he got the audience cheering when they were about to go into a riot. But as like the dramatic shot for the show, we see the head of Homer Simpson roll off the stage. And once again, they just really love cracking stuff, like breaking things into pieces, because we see Homer's head shatter, much like the frame did at the beginning of the episode.
Oh, that's a sad metaphor there, Miles.
But once again, we hear the narrator.
Do we?
Richie doesn't have his script up, so the dream was
we're going
over.
to Act 3. I'm so done with this.
The dream was over. Coming up, was the dream really over? Yes, it was. Or was it? And Homer finds a new passion. And we see Homer hard at work in a music studio. It looks like he's sound mixing, adjusting knobs and whatnot. But then after a small pause, dusting and polishing mixing boards. When Behind the Laughter continues. And that brings us to the end of our second act. I will point out these runtimes are like literally almost to the second even. The first act, this act was 7 minutes and 41 seconds. And I believe the first act was 7 minutes and 8 seconds. So like this episode is like perfectly split down the middle, or into thirds rather. Once again, we get the traditional sound and look of the Behind the Music Show program with the narrator coming in. The Simpsons TV show started out on a wing and a prayer, but now the wing was on fire and the prayer had been answered by Satan. After the State Fair fiasco, none of the family were speaking to each other. Fox put the show on hiatus and replaced it with hidden camera footage from the dressing room at Ann Taylor. That's fucking creepy. Yeah. But also not far off of what I think was playing on Fox when basically if Fox didn't have football or Married with Children or The Simpsons playing, it was total trash most of the time.
Yep. That slugfest at the State Fair was
much
really...
like their news now. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Take two. Miles, can you get with us here? That slugfest at the State Fair was really a blessing. It gave us a chance to pursue solo projects. I returned to my first love, the legitimate theater.
And we cut to Homer. He's in Rent 2, Condo Fever. And we get to two actresses on stage. As a young female artist, I really love living in this East Village loft. Oh, that must be our new landlord, Mr. Stingley. Homer comes in dressed in like typical, like almost like, oh my God, who's the bad guy from like the Rocky and Bullwinkle show? Snidely.
That sounds good. Snidely, yeah.
Snidely Whiplash.
There you go.
Yeah, he's basically dressed like that, essentially.
Where is the rent? I must have the rent. Dollars, dimes, and nickels. I need them all right now.
Cutting back to the real life Homer, if you will, interviewing. And he's holding up a piece of wall with a bite mark out of it. I literally chewed the scenery. The other family members also had solo projects. We see Bart replaced Lorenzo Lamas on Renegade. Marge created a nightclub act that had her doing a rendition of I shot the sheriff, but I did not shoot the deputy. The next time you see the next time you see a sheriff, shoot him. A smile.
Oh.
Lisa sang too in a tell-all book blasting the family.
To prolong the run of the series, I was secretly giving anti-growth hormones.
That's ridiculous. How could I even get all 5 necessary drops into her cereal? What? Needless to say, the book does nothing to mend the growing divisions between the family members, and in fact, nobody really seemed to get along. That Thanksgiving, we see that everybody is bringing a lawyer to dinner with them. And literally, like, every comment that is made, even like past the gravy, is always like interrupted by the lawyers making sure that that's like an acceptable thing. It was the best Thanksgiving ever. I mean, emotionally, it was terrible, but the turkey was so moist.
So moist. The carcass of the Simpsons empire had been picked clean. But then came help from an unexpected source.
And we see Dr. Hibbert. I knew there was only one person who could reunite this troubled clan. My old fraternity brother, Willie Nelson.
I'd do anything for Kegmaster Julius, so I picked up a phony awards show.
I love Kegmaster Julius.
So he's talking about that.
Yeah, he's like literally in a machine that's designed to braid his hair, and it reads out hair jam as he's doing his interview.
Not again. Time saver my ass.
Bart comes in. When Willie asked me to be a presenter at the New Awareness Awards, I had to think about it for about a microsecond.
You just don't say no to the red-headed stranger. And when I heard that it was for awareness, that sealed the deal. It's so funny because they're not aware of what's going on.
Yeah, again, this is a completely fake award show. It's basically like the most expensive intervention ever.
Yeah.
Would Willie's fence-mending eggs bear fruit, or would his olive branch be torn apart by woodpeckers of mistrust? We actually cut to the New Awareness Awards presentation, which is a full-blown fake award show, complete with a full audience of people. And musical guests, because the man actually finishes playing a song.
Thank you, Taco, for that loving tribute to Falco. Now, to present the award for most violent rap group, Homer Simpson.
And Homer starts to walk in the stage, and as soon as he takes step, the announcer continues.
And Marge Simpson.
To immediately Homer says, huh? What's she doing here?
And Bart and Lisa Simpson.
And everybody walks out confused, like, hey, what's going on? But Willie's got the answers.
Well, I'll be honest. The New Awareness Awards are all an elaborate sham.
What? I knew it was too good to be true. And it was...
Woody Allen.
Yeah, there you go. Woody Allen threw down his
all the awards.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
So this whole thing was just a trick to get us back together?
Well, I'm also trying to patch things up between Van Halen and Sammy Hagar.
And they see Sammy Hagar and Van Halen in the audience, and they're kind of like have their backs turned, and they both have their arms crossed, like they're not over it.
But the main thing is for you folks to stop this silly feud. Isn't that right, people?
Yay!
Hug! 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 Hug!
And the Simpsons eventually do, and that causes the audience to roar with applause again. And Willie Nelson's two ponytails raise up like Pippi Longstocking. Real quick on that note, before we get too far away from the Willie stuff, I have to tell a cool story. Probably the Willie stuff. It's hard to get back to Willie, all right? I was stretching that, Willie. But anyway, I want to talk about Willie Nelson's voice acting on this episode because there is a cool story that came from this. Willie Nelson agreed to do this show, and he was excited to do it, but he was very busy at this time in his career. And he actually requested to record his lines from his home in Texas. And when Mike Scully went down to record Willie Nelson's line, a very apologetic assistant of Willie Nelson's basically told him, like, I'm so sorry, but his schedule is running behind. Are you okay waiting for a little while Willie finishes up what he's doing, and then he can do these lines? And Mike Scully, who had traveled down there for just this purpose, of course, isn't going to be like, no, we're just not going to have Willie Nelson on the show now. So he, of course, agrees to watch. And what ends up happening is he's invited to come into the recording studio because what was holding Willie Nelson up is he was busy recording a duet with legendary musician B.B. King. And Mike Scully got to sit in for 3 hours and watch these two record in a private studio. And he said it was like the best work delay he's ever had in his entire life. And then even more fun just on the Willie Nelson front, something that just like made my heart grow 3 sizes this day, or technically yesterday when I listened to this commentary. But Willie Nelson talked to Mike Scully after they got finished recording, and Willie basically just said that he was a big fan of the show. And it just so happened that a lot of times The Simpsons would be what he would watch right before he'd go out on stage. Because if you think about it, he's headlining shows, which means he's usually going on at like 9 or 9:30, and The Simpsons would come on at like 7:30, 8:30, depending on where you are in the world or whatever. And so a lot of times he'd be sitting in his trailer before a show, and he'd watch an episode of The Simpsons before he'd go take the stage.
That's really cool, but like that's got to be like so empowering, and at the same time like bring you down to earth when somebody like that's like, I literally like watch you guys all the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's super cool just to know that you're relating to not only like the mainstream audience, but like these legendary celebrities who at the end of the day are in fact just people, but sometimes it doesn't feel that way.
Right. They don't pee or poop.
We cut to the Simpsons sitting on a grassy hill by a pond, and the narrator cuts in, "The Simpsons' bitter past was forgotten, and now the future looks brighter than ever for this Northern Kentucky family." But there's a note here on this. So this was a gag that they did. They replaced this on different airings with different states just to completely add into more of the craziness of where are the Simpsons from mysteries type of thing.
Southern Missouri.
Exactly. "We put all the craziness behind us, and now it's time to get back to what matters. The show. And the Sunday comic strip.
Which Homer writes himself.
So you know it's great."
Why, you little... So whether choking their son or poking some fun, the Simpsons will keep on gagging for years to come.
Too immature for this show, Richie. I'm sorry. The Simpsons family, we see them watching. They're editing an episode of the show on the monitor here, basically. And Marge is like, "I can't believe it. We won another contest.
The Simpsons are going to Delaware.
I want to see Wilmington.
I want to visit a screen door factory."
And then Homer nods over to the editor. "This will be the last season."
Yep.
Next week on Behind the Laughter, Huckleberry Hound. And we cut to an interview with Huckleberry Hound.
"I was so gay, but I couldn't tell anyone."
And we end our episode here, the end of Act 3 and the end of the episode, but the credits this time are actually clips of Homer's stunts from the past while the song Simpsons Christmas Boogie plays.
"We'll make you feel all right. Simpsons Christmas Boogie. We're dancing to the beat. We'll make you move your feet." Go ahead, Miles.
Simpsons Christmas Boogie.
Simpsons Christmas Boogie.
Yeah. All right. We've done enough. We didn't prepare for the singing on this one, but hey, neither did they, so it's fine. That brings us to the end of our episode Behind the Laughter. What a wild ride that one was to review. I'm not gonna lie. That was a weird one all the way from top to bottom. But it was fun. Richie, did you or that book of yours have anything else that you want to talk about on this episode?
No, I just I kind of talked about earlier. I enjoyed this one a lot more as an adult, and just it's got a lot of funny lines in it, and I have a lot of respect for the way they made something like this funny. And I guess it's farcical, so it's going to be funny in nature. But like, there's certain moments where you're seeing the behind the scenes interviews where they're talking about what happened, and they always have somebody go one way and then like Homer go the exact opposite way. Mm-hmm. And that's where a lot of the comedy comes from. And sometimes in that regards, comedy can be very, very tough to make it funny enough for millions of people to watch and laugh at. And I don't know. After watching it this time, I had a lot more respect for what they were doing in this episode.
Yeah, and it seems like the people that decide who win Emmys agree with you, because this episode won for Outstanding Animated Program.
Oh, that's right.
very highly reviewed episode. And once again, I am going to go back to what I said earlier. I do feel like this episode was actually stronger and more funny at the time that it aired because of the nature of how television worked at the time, how popular these shows had become. Behind the Music really kicked off like a whole series of like going behind the scenes of a lot of various different things. And just the structure and style was so perfectly parodied that it's hard to still have that respect and that appreciation for just how great this episode is in a lot of ways. And another factor that did limit this episode, while it did win the Emmy, there was a little bit of less... what am I trying to say? This episode was less well received by the time it aired than it could have been because it was accused of being derivative of other comedy shows that had started to parody it as well. But the issue, as Matt Selman said on the project or on the commentary, was that this is an animated show. So when they pitched this idea, it was before SNL had parodied it. It was before other sitcoms had parodied it. And because the animation process takes, like a year before they're actually able to put the episode out on the air, other shows, again, especially something like Saturday Night Live, has a big advantage when it comes to being in the moment or topical at the time. So this episode was creative, it was unique, it was original, but it didn't necessarily get all the points it could have in those categories because of the delay of animation versus live television.
Interesting.
I thought so too. And that's an interesting note, I think, that we'll end on for today's episode.
I have one more thing that I read.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Go right ahead.
They'll actually use the bit about Delaware in a future episode.
I forgot I had also read that.
I
what was the episode that they used it in?
I don't remember what the episode is, man. But like I remember reading that the little bit where they're saying the show's over or it'll be the last season because they're making jokes at Delaware. They'll actually reuse that in a future episode. So we'll see that. Be on the lookout.
It'll be in the Simpsons Tall Tales, which I believe is going to be at the very tail end of season 12, if I remember correctly.
I like the phrasing there. So never mind. Don't be on the lookout. You'll know when it's coming up.
We'll let you know for sure. But yeah, that's going to do it for this week's Best Darn Diddly Review Show. As always, we appreciate you so much taking the time to listen to us ramble on about cartoons. That's what grown men do, right? That's what I'm told. But yeah, this has been a fun episode and a fun season. I have had a really good time going through all of these episodes, and I'm still at a point where most of these episodes are very familiar to me from when I was younger, though every season when we get done, I'm always thinking it's going to be the season that is like, is this going to be where I stop recognizing episodes? But that is going to be better discussed on our next episode, I do believe. For right now, just again, thank you. And make sure if you want to keep up with us to follow us online. I am at Mr. Most Days Off pretty much everywhere. Our show is Best Darn Diddly. That's DIDDLY. Interact with us on Twitter and everywhere. And of course, you can also follow Richie the Whiz Kid at @TheWhiz_Kid23. And if you tag him directly enough, I will tell him that people are tweeting him, so he'll log in.
Hey, I work weird hours, so sometimes I'm not going to respond till like 5:30, 6:30 in the morning. But yeah, eventually I'll get you. And then I'll have to wait 12 hours for the response to that. It's fine. It works. But
make sure... Oh, go ahead.
No, do your thing, man. This whole episode's been like this. Your whole episode's been like this.
Yeah, we'll actually
I'm just going to stop talking.
Yeah, we'll actually talk to each other before the next episode. Maybe get on the same page or whatever. I don't know. But do make sure you come back with us again next week as we are going to be doing the Simpsons Season 11 Finale Spectacular.
Man, there's so many times in this I can't even talk. There's so many times in this podcast I thought about firing Miles. Damn it, I quit!
I knew this show was going to end in like a burning pile of rubbish. That's it right there. Guys, until next time, be cromulent to each other.